Hello all and welcome to video classes by Konnur Institutes. Today we will be discussing the continuation part of the same chapter, which is theory of consumer behavior. I hope you all remember that in the last class we were discussing the optimal choice of a consumer and his budget constraint, how the budget set changes according to the income, if we keep changing his income or the price of a one good and all, right? So today we will discuss what is demand function and what is demand curve. So when we are talking about this demand, there are certain things which come to picture, right? So the price of the goods, the income of the consumer, his likes, his preferences, and the quantity of the goods, how much he is going to buy or how much he is willing to buy, and whether he is going to afford those quantity of goods which he is willing to buy. So these all are the things which come under this demand curve. Okay, so what is this demand? Demand is the quantity of the good or the commodity wherein a consumer is willing to buy. Okay, so that's the quantity of the commodity wherein he is willing to buy and at a given price, which should be according to his preferences and the likes. So that is called as the demand. When we are talking about the quantity of a commodity, willingness of a consumer to buy, that doesn't mean that everything whatever he is willing to buy should be in the budget set. Okay, so if I say that I am willing to buy a car, okay, so car which is costing more than my budget set, then that doesn't mean that it fits in the demand, because demand is that wherein it has to match to all the features. For example, the affordability of a consumer, the purchasing power, what we say, okay, so that should be fitting in that budget. So that's call it as the demand. So demand curve is something which is related to this both demand function and demand curve. So when we are discussing about the demand and when we are studying the consumption or the combination of the bundle, how the consumer is going to make the changes in the bundle so that he can satisfy his ultimate utility. So that comes under this demand curve. So the curve tells us about the how much the consumer is going to buy when there is a change in the price. Okay, so that is about the demand curve. And what is this demand function? Demand function derives the demand curve. So we should have an algebraic expression so that that derives the demand curve. So here the demand function is y is equal to f of x. Okay, function of x. So x is an independent variable and y is a dependent variable. So for each variable, for each value of x, there will be a unique value of y. Okay, so on this basis we draw a curve which will be like this. Okay, so that this function is called as the demand function. Why we are calling it as a demand function is because x is expressed for price and y is expressed for quantities. As we had discussed earlier, the behavior of the consumer changes according to the price of the commodity. Okay, for example, if the price of let's say mango is 50 rupees and his budget is somewhere down that 50 rupees, then is he going to buy that mango? No, right? Because we can see here that there is 0. That means when the price reaches to 50 rupees for one mango, then the consumer is not going to buy. But if it is falling down or if it is falling below his budget set, for example, say 40 rupees, which he has, right? So then he can buy, right? So he can buy one unit. Okay, so this tells that x is the price, which is an independent variable. According to the changes in the prices, the consumer makes alteration in the quantities. So as the price falls, the quantity of the purchase of the quantity of the goods of for a consumer, it increases. Okay, so this acts negatively. If a price increases, then quantity of the goods or the commodity will come down. So that's the reason we say it as a negative relation. Okay, so why we are calling it as negative is when one raises, the another decreases. If another example, if the price of the commodity decreases, then the consumer tends to buy that commodity in more because the price has decreased. So he has got much liberty to buy more goods. So that's the reason this equation has negative relationship between each other. So it always defines x as a value, whereas the x is independent and y is a dependent. So for every change of y, x, for each value of x, we will get a unique value of a y. So this y is equal to f of x helps us to derive this demand curve. So when we are talking about this demand curve, you can take any point on this demand curve. That tells us the combination of two goods. Okay, that tells us the how much quantity of one good is being substituted with the another good, which sets into his budget. So demand curve tells us about the price and the quantity. For example, see. Okay, this is just an imaginary. When we have say for example 35 rupees, then how many mangoes are you buying? Okay, this is quantity and this is the price. So when we have 35 rupees for one mango, we are purchasing only one, right? But as you see from here, the price has decreased here. Let's say 20. Okay, so when the price from 35 to 20 has decreased, you can see here there is an extension. Here we have increased in the quantity, right? So this demand curve or the demand function tells about the price and the quantity relationship. When price increases, the quantity decreases, and it acts vice versa. When the price falls, the quantity of the goods or the commodity increases. So this nature, the behavior of the consumer, when there is a changes in the price, we can come to understand that this demand curve helps us to understand how the behavior of the consumer is making with the changes of the prices. So let's consider an example here. Okay, I said that this demand function will be always expressed in the algebraic terms, right? So the value of x gives us the unique value of y. Let's take 0, 1, 2, 3 as the value of x, and y. The value of the y we will take it as 10, 15, 18 and 20. So when you plot these numbers on this graph, you will get for a 0 you have 1, right? Okay, so 1 and then 15, 18 and 20. So here you can see there is a upward sloping. Okay, we have upward sloping. Understood, right? See, here also we can see from 0 it has increased to 1, from 1 it has increased to 2. The same manner, here from 10 it has increased to 15. So that's the reason we can see here the demand curve is in upward sloping. Okay, so this can be expressed as y is equal to x plus 50. Understood? So another example we have y is equal to x minus 5. Okay, sorry, this is not 50, this is 5. So when we have considered this demand function, okay, this is also a demand function and this is also demand function. This upward sloping is being derived from this demand function. Okay, and now when we are discussing about this demand function, which is y is equal to x minus 5. Okay, so here the variables for x and y will be, for 0 it will be 100, for 1 it will be 90, for 2 it will be 70, and for 3 it will be 60. So when you plot these numbers in the graph, so you can see there is a downward sloping. Okay, so even this is also a demand function which is deriving us the downward sloping of the demand curve. Okay, so this is the downward sloping of the demand curve. So by this we understand that the demand curve or the demand function tells us about the consumer behavior, how he is going to buy the commodity, the quantity of the commodity, how he is going to buy. So it all depends on the price of a commodity. Here we are keeping in mind that the consumer income, the price of the other goods, the likes and the dislikes, or the likes and the preferences of the consumer here are constant. Okay, so that's the reason we are not talking about a combination of bundles here, but we are talking about a single commodity which we have discussed as a mango. Okay, so mango here on the x-axis we are talking about the quantity and on the y-axis we are talking about the price. So when the price of a mango increases, okay, then the consumer tends to buy only very small quantity of mangoes. But when the prices falls, then what happens? The consumer tends to buy more quantity of the mangoes. So that's the main motto of the demand curve. So here we are not talking about two or more goods or the bundle, but keeping in mind that the consumer income, the preferences, the likes of the consumer and the price of the other goods. Okay, when we are talking about bundle, we had combination of two goods, right? So keeping in mind that the price of the other good is also constant and the price of the other good, if the price of that good changes, then what happens to the behavior of the consumer is being discussed here in the demand curve. So I hope this is clear for you all, and in the next class we can discuss about the deriving of the demand curve with the help of the indifference curve and the budget constraint, and also we can see more on the law of demand.